I'm going to move on to systemic mycosis. Dr. Nadia has already started this topic with you, and I am going to discuss Histoplasma capsulatum. Now, what is systemic mycosis? These are the infections which develop by inhalation of spores, and in the tissues, these spores are going to differentiate into yeast cells or other specialized structures like spirules. Mostly, these infections are asymptomatic, but in immunocompromised individuals, they can lead to disseminated diseases. Once we are done with this topic, all of you should be able to enlist the three systemic fungi and give the morphological features of each. You should know the habitat and the clinical manifestation of these organisms, and as I've been hammering in, lab diagnosis is extremely important. Coming to the different systemic mycosis causing organisms, the most important is Histoplasma capsulatum. This is the fungi which is present within the macrophages in form of yeast. So they are the only intracellular yeast cells causing human infection. Blastomyces dermatitidis I have already done with you while I was doing Cryptococcus neoformans, and I told you these yeasts have a single broad based bud as compared to Cryptococcus, which are yeast with single and narrow based bud. Coccidioides are going to result in formation of spirules. Nadia has already done this in detail, and they have endospores within them. They are filled with endospores. Paracoccidioides are yeast with a typical morphology, and they have multiple buds around them, and they are known as ship captain's wheels. Now I'm going to show you each of this systemic fungi, so that you can remember the morphological forms of each. This is Histoplasma capsulatum, and you can see the macrophage. This is the nucleus of the macrophage, and you can see it filled with the intracellular yeast cells. This is another picture showing you the large nucleus, and the cytoplasm is filled with intracellular yeast cells. Blastomyces, you have already seen this slide while we were doing Cryptococcus neoformans, and you can see a single broad base. This is the broad base, and this is the bud which is attached to the main spore. Coccidioides immitis, you can see in the tissue, you can see this large spirule, thick-walled, and it is filled up with spores which are known as endospores. And here you see Paracoccidioides. This is the yeast with multiple buds. You can see several buds around the main bud or around the main yeast, and this is known as the ship captain's wheel. These morphological forms are very important because you get MCQs on them. Now coming to Histoplasma capsulatum, it is responsible for histoplasmosis, and the other name for this is Darling's disease. They are, as I told you, intracellular yeast cells, and they mainly are present within the macrophages. And via the macrophages, they can be carried, either they are in the lungs or they can be carried to liver, bone marrow, spleen, etc. They exist in two forms. They are dimorphic fungus. Either they are present in form of molds and then they are there in the soil, or they are present in yeast. When they are in the tissue, they are in yeast forms, and in soil, they are in form of molds. Asexual forms are of two types. They are either macroconidias or they are microconidias. Now the macroconidias have a very specific morphology. They are tuberculate, they are thick-walled, and they have finger-like projections. In the next slide, I'll show you what they really look like. Microconidia, on the other hand, are very small structures and they are thin-walled, and these microconidia are inhaled by human beings and they are responsible for disease production in humans. This slide shows you the macroconidia. You can see these thick-walled tuberculate structures which have these finger-like projections on them, and you can easily visualize the smaller microconidia. They are smooth-walled and they are small, and when they break down, they are inhaled by humans and they are responsible for disease production. This is another picture showing you the tuberculate finger-like projection of macroconidias, and these are the microconidia which are smaller and they are smooth-walled. Coming to its modes of transmission and the routes of transmission. Transmission is basically by soil which is heavily contaminated either by birds' droppings or by bats' dropping. Now, birds, as I've been telling you, are not infected by this organism. However, bats gets infected and they can pass the spores in their excreta. Secondly, people who are working in bat infested caves are also prone to getting this infection of histoplasmosis. Routes of transmission by inhalation of microconidia, not macroconidia. Microconidia are inhaled, or the mycelium fragments from the soil can also be inhaled in rare cases, and it is going to produce disease. At times, there may be inoculation of the spores in the skin, and then cutaneous lesion can result. This picture is showing you high risk factors which are exposure to droppings of bats or birds, and once these spores are inhaled by the individual, they go and settle down in the alveolar spaces in the lung and results in disease production. Coming to its pathogenesis, histoplasma capsule spores are inhaled. They go and settle down in the lungs in the alveolar spaces where they are taken up by the immune cells or the macrophages, and they are going to take them to the mediastinal lymph node where they start where they are converted they are converted into yeast cells, and the yeast cells start multiplying, and then they are carried via the bloodstream to different parts of our body. Within the macrophages, the yeast are formed from the spores which are inhaled. When they are taken up by the macrophages, then these spores are converted into yeast cells and they start multiplying, and they are carried to different parts of our body via the bloodstream. This is another picture showing you the pathogenesis of histoplasmosis, respiratory infection by inhalation of these spores. The spores which are inhaled, they are taken up by the macrophages in the lung. In the macrophages, these spores are converted into budding yeast cells. The budding yeast cells starts multiplying in these macrophages, and then they are carried by the bloodstream to the lymph nodes, to liver, spleen, adrenal, bone marrow, etc. So I hope this pathogenesis is clear now. And then we move on to the clinical manifestation. Now, the clinical manifestations could be pulmonary, when these spores which are inhaled are taken up by the macrophages in the lung and they are converted into a yeast form and they result in pulmonary lesions, or they can result in cutaneous lesions, or they could be disseminated histoplasmosis, mainly seen in patients where the immune system is suppressed, like in patients with AIDS. And the characteristic feature of disseminated histoplasmosis is presence of ulcers in the mouth, tongue, pharynx or larynx, and at the same time the patient has pancytopenia. Now, coming to the clinical manifestations separately. In this organism, as I said, can spread throughout the body. Mostly the patients remain asymptomatic, or if there is formation of small granulomatous lesion, they are going to heal by calcification and they are missed. However, with intense exposure, especially people who are working in chicken house or bat infested caves, pneumonia and cavitary lung lesions may become clinically manifest. So there could be pneumonias, as you can see over here. Cavitations in the lungs becomes very evident on x-rays, and this is when there is intense exposure to this pathogen, and mainly people who are exposed are the ones who are working in bat infested caves or in chicken houses or poultry farms. Then there could be severe disseminated histoplasmosis. Now, severe disseminated histoplasmosis is mainly seen in infants or individuals who are immunocompromised, like patients with AIDS. In infants, again, when they go to the lungs, the spores are converted into yeast cells and they can result in pneumonias. At the same time, together with pneumonias, they can also produce typical lung lesions with central areas of necrosis surrounded by fibrosis, and that gets calcified later on. In patients with AIDS, As I said, this ulcerative lesion of the tongue is very important. Mostly your SEQ is based on this part, that there's a patient with AIDS who presents with ulcerative lesion of the tongue, and when this ulcerative lesion is scraped on a microscopic examination, you're going to see intracellular yeast cells, and at the same time they could be pancytopenia. So I'm going to end here, and we will be discussing lab diagnosis later on, because that is something very important and I want to do it separately. Now this is the type of SCQ which you see in your exam, and you can see an HIV positive patient, means that the patient has AIDS and there is a painful ulcerative lesion on the tongue, and microscopic examination reveals intracellular budding yeast cells, and the only intracellular budding yeast cell is what? It is histoplasma. Based on this observation, what is your most likely diagnosis is histoplasmosis, and the organism is Histoplasma capsulatum. What is the pathogenesis, or how is this disease caused, and where do these pathogens live, or how are they acquired by human beings? So please go through this properly, because this is very important, and you get these types of SCQs in your exams, and you're going to answer this together with your roll numbers. You're going to mark your presence once you have answered this SCQ. Thank you.